genuinely wish I was exaggerating when I said this Chanel bag paid for my flight to Europe. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Celesta. We talk about all things luxury shopping and handbags. If you love those things, make sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do post videos twice a week. So we have a slightly different video today, if you will. I also want to be very transparent because I think it's easy to see, you know, the videos that I post of all the vlogs and where I'm going and what I'm buying. And you're just wondering like, how are you affording these things? And genuinely, I am able to travel so much because of my credit cards. And so I kind of wanted to walk through what my credit card situation looks like. And with all the shopping that I do, how can I maximize my credit cards to then pay for my flights? So this year alone, I have taken 4 international trips this year, and I only paid for my flight to Mexico. Each person's situation is a little bit different, but I probably say my biggest expenses are dining out, shopping, travel, so that includes like flights, hotels, eating while you're on vacation, stuff like that, and groceries. So let's start with kind of like the beginner intro into like travel cards, how you should maximize it. And this is really like what I did. So of course, like based on what you're spending and what your categories of like spend are going to be a little bit different. But I started out with the Chase Freedom Unlimited, which is very simple. 1.5x points on everything. This also doesn't have an annual fee, so this was really nice, and I still have this card today. This is kind of my like primary shopping card. This is the card that I use at Abercrombie. This is the card that I use at Lululemon. This is the card that I use at Louis Vuitton. So it gives me 1.5x on everything. And I paired this with my Chase Sapphire Preferred. This is the entry level like travel card with Chase. I really like this card because you're able to transfer 1-to-1 points to airline and other hotel partners, I believe. I've actually never transferred a hotel partner. I really like to keep this open because of United. With United, then I'm able to basically book any international flight. And if you book it far enough in advance, typically I can buy flights for about 40 to 50,000 points one way per person. The Chase Sapphire does have a $95 annual fee, but for me, this was well worth it. At the time, I probably took maybe 1 international trip a year. And so that means I'm not paying, you know, $1,600 to $2,000 for a round trip airline ticket. That was well worth it for me. Then a couple years ago, we moved into a little bit more advanced lifestyle creep, wanting to travel more. We also got married abroad. And so this was around the time that we opened this credit card when we, you know, got married or like was planning the wedding. So we decided to keep our Chase Freedom Unlimited because that has no annual fee. It doesn't hurt to keep it open. And then we also then upgraded our Chase Sapphire Preferred to the Reserve. At the time, this was a $550 annual fee, and now it's just under $800 annual fee. We also have to take into account the authorized user fee, which I believe is like $195 or $200. So with all of my shopping, I was still getting 1.5 points on everything. And then with the Reserve, I got to be a bougie bitch. I got to get into the lounge. I got global entry. I got 4x points on hotel and flights. And then I got 3x points on dining. So if it wasn't travel and it wasn't dining, I used my Freedom Unlimited. And so I was able to rack up a lot of points because of course we're eating out a lot, you know, all the things. I know a lot of people kind of ask like why we picked the Reserve over the Amex Platinum. And I personally feel like the way that we are spending, we just don't maximize the use out of the Amex Platinum. The Amex Platinum gives you 5x points on flights and then 1x points on everything else, which I don't book a lot of flights. A lot of my flights are paid with points, especially international flights. Like sometimes we'll fly down to San Diego or SoCal or like whatever, and that's like with Southwest or Alaska, and they're relatively cheap. So I don't feel like I would get that many points with the Amex Platinum. There is a flex factor with the Amex Platinum, but I didn't take that into account because with an $800 annual fee, and I'm really not maximizing my points for the card, it's just not worth it. However, I did get the Amex Gold because I feel like it has a better point multiplier for what we spend on, which is dining out and groceries. And I think gas. And then you also get 3x points on flights. And with the Amex Gold, you're still able to transfer your points over to travel partners with most of the travel partners like Air Canada, like TAP Portugal, and Virgin Atlantic, British Airways. So in theory, I don't need to get the Amex Platinum in order to stack it with the gold. I'm sure it works well complementary, but now in this scenario, I have access to lounges, I have global entry, and I get multiple points with Amex Gold with food and groceries. And then I also get access to different travel partners as well, because Chase, I can transfer to United. With Amex, I have different travel partners. In the last year or so, we did make a change because the Chase Sapphire Reserve, we'd probably be paying close to $1,000 just for the Chase Sapphire. So we decided to downgrade that back to the preferred. So now we're only paying $95 for that annual fee. And then we did open up the Capital One Venture X, which I really, really like this. This became our kind of like catch-all card because it's now earning us 2x points on everything. So we did keep the Amex Gold, we opened up the Capital One Venture X, and we have the Chase Sapphire Preferred. So we still have our lounge access, we still have our global entry. We almost like replaced the Freedom Unlimited with the Capital One. So that kind of takes over our general shopping card. And then we still earn point multipliers on food and groceries. The only downside with Capital One is that there are restrictions now with the lounges. So even if you're an authorized user, you don't have access to the lounge unless you pay like an additional amount of money. So that's kind of the only change. I believe that change went into effect around February of 2026. Overall, I'm really happy with the setup that we have right now because I feel like we have points in different buckets, if you will. We have points with the Capital One, we have points with Amex, we have points with Chase, and each kind of have slightly different travel partners or different bonuses. So right now, I believe Amex is running a 30% transfer bonus with Virgin Atlantic, and then Capital One is running a transfer bonus with EVA Air. So depending on kind of which airline is running a promotion, we can kind of use those points for where we want to go. So for example, later this year, we're going to go to Asia. So it kind of makes sense to keep the points with Capital One and then use those points to go to Asia. This is our current credit card setup, but I typically reevaluate our credit cards about once a year towards the end of the year. I have considered the Alaska Atmos rewards card because that's a new card that they recently released this year with a $500 annual fee, but you do get 3x points on all foreign transactions. And so for me, if I'm buying a Chanel bag in Paris, that suddenly earns me 3x points instead of 2x points with the Capital One. And so there's a lot of things to kind of consider when we're looking at future credit cards. I know Built also released a new credit card as well for mortgages, but there's a lot of stipulations around like you have to spend this much on regular purchases before you can get the points on mortgages or something like that. And so there's a lot of things to kind of consider. There's so many credit cards around. Now that I've kind of walked through my thought process with my credit cards and everything, I know you're wondering like, what the heck do you mean by that Chanel bag paid for your trip to Europe? And here's how we did it. So with the Capital One Venture X, we get 2x points on everything. The Chanel bag cost me after tax just under $7,000. So that gave me 14,000 points with Capital One. At the time when I booked my flight to London, there was a transfer bonus at the time. So I believe it cost 9,000 points, but the Chanel bag pretty much pays for my tickets to London. If you take anything away from this video is that you can really maximize your credit cards with your shopping. Like obviously you're here because you love to shop, as do I. And how can you make the shopping kind of work for you? How can you use it to fund other aspects of your life? Do I pretty much fly economy? Yes. I also am short, so it kind of doesn't matter. Like I don't need the leg room. But I also feel like I'm able to then buy what I want and then use the points from the credit cards to fund other aspects of my life when I like to go travel, where I like to eat, you know, things like that. I think you can really make them work for you. Of course, you're paying an annual fee, but I think with the amount of traveling that we're doing, it more than pays for itself. I do want to caveat this by saying that all of these things, you know, travel and Chanel bags and all of this stuff, they're all non-essential items. Please do not carry a balance on your credit card over non-essential items. If you cannot afford to get it, you probably don't need it in the first place. These are all non-essentials. And, you know, you can really make it work for you, but if you end up carrying a balance and you have to pay interest, that's really when it's not worth it anymore because you're paying so much money in interest that it's not worth it. I was hesitant to make videos like this because I really don't want to encourage poor financial spending. I mean, you guys see the hauls and you see the travel vlogs and stuff, and the last thing I want to do is encourage like poor financial spending and thinking like, and almost like keeping up with the Joneses and like what feels like normal, because each person has different lifestyles, each person prioritizes different things. But I wanted to share kind of what we do, and in hopes that helps you. If you guys have very similar spending patterns like me as well, you like to shop, you like to travel, you like to eat, I hope this was helpful for you guys. I will, subtle plug, this is not sponsored at all, but I will leave my referral links in the description box below in the event that you guys sign up, because that helps me travel a little bit more too. Maybe we'll bump up to premium economy, who knows? But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any other questions. I know this was kind of a slightly different topic than what I usually talk about, but I am pretty passionate in like personal finance and credit cards, even though it might not look like it because you guys see the hauls and you're like, that girl, like she's spending irresponsibly. This is something that I'm quite passionate in, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'll leave another video for you guys here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!